First of all, we need to look a little bit at the history of what has happened here, because we used to have tremendous bipartisan support in terms of these public health and environmental laws. I remember the glory days of the Senate in the 60s and 70s. It was the Senate, and the chairman has talked about this, that passed the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, created the Environmental Protection Agency, passed the Endangered Species Act. All of those were passed and created with significant bipartisan support. In fact, anywhere from 8 to 12 Republicans were joining in and felt that these were strong laws and needed to be passed. And you don't need to look very farther than the majorities. In 1967, the Air Quality Act passed 88-0. 1970, Clean Air Act 73-0, championed by a number of Republican senators. In 1990, the Clean Air Act, championed by President George H.W. Bush and his EPA administrator, Bill Riley. That vote in 1990, 89-10. So broad bipartisan support. What has happened here? What has happened to the Senate and to the Congress in terms of protecting public health? And I would suggest that what we've seen with this House Republican budget is very strong, powerful special interests weighing in, and those folks on that side kind of catering to that kind of mentality, rather than looking out for public health and looking out for the American people. I want to talk a little bit about the impact of this bill on Americans and on public health and on New Mexicans, and look at the disastrous things. But at this point, I want to ask and engage with Senator Merkley in some of those damaging things that he sees in terms of public health, environment, in this H.R. 1 or this House Republican budget. And so I would yield to Senator Merkley at this point.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join my colleague from New Mexico in discussing both the general environment, the environment in which we no longer have strong bipartisan support for clean air and clean water that we once had, and some of the specifics of the House Republican budget and the damage that they would do to American citizens across this country. Just to give you a small sense of this, in 2010, the Clean Air Act prevented 1.7 million asthma attacks, 130,000 heart attacks, and 86,000 emergency room visits. That is why leading public health experts oppose these cuts, groups like the American Lung Association, which said House Resolution 1 is toxic to public health. Now, why is that the case? I'll just give a couple examples and turn this back to my colleague. One example is that it would prohibit standards for toxic air pollution, including mercury, lead, arsenic, dioxin, and acid gases coming from coal-burning power plants. A second is that it would prohibit standards for toxic air pollution coming from industries burning coal and oil. A third is that it would prohibit guidance on how to protect clean drinking water from mountaintop mining. A fourth is it would prohibit standards for handling hazardous waste from burning coal just 2 years after a disaster in Tennessee caused 1 billion gallons of coal waste to spill into people's neighborhoods and homes. I have a longer list, but I'll stop there and note that these impacts on water and air occur to citizens in every state under House Resolution 1, the House Republican budget.
Madam President, Senator Merkley, if the American people really knew what was happening here, I would think they would be out in the streets here in Washington like we're seeing in Wisconsin, where people are turning out and are energized, because the rollback of these environmental laws really is a rollback on public health. And as Senator Merkley, as you have talked about very persuasively, I mean, we're talking about preventing heart attacks, preventing emergency room visits. In New Mexico alone, over 170,000 residents suffer from asthma. Over 47,000 of those are children, and thousands suffer from respiratory illnesses. With the rollbacks in the House Republican budget, those folks are going to suffer a lot more. It's going to impact vulnerable populations. The House Republican budget put hundreds of thousands of New Mexicans at greater risk from pollution, from power plants, oil refineries, mines, and cement kilns. The Clean Air Act has had a very positive impact over the years that it has been in law. It has cut 6 major pollutants by over 40%. But air pollution still claims 70,000 lives per year, 3 times that of car accidents. So if we weaken that act by these riders and this approach in the House Republican budget, that number is going to rise. The number of lives that are claimed each year are going to rise. And that's why one of the major organizations that monitors this, the American Lung Association, opposes these environmental rollbacks in the House bill. The Clean Air Act also protects pregnant mothers and developing children from mercury, a neurotoxin that creates problems in brain development, including attention and memory problems. And mercury comes out of the smokestacks into the air, deposits in our water, and is also consumed in the fish that we eat. And just to give a little example, in New Mexico, and Senator Merkley, you may have this up in Oregon too, we have these coal-fired power plants that are emitting mercury. It gets into the streams. We now have a warning on every stream in New Mexico. Every stream in New Mexico, if you're going to catch fish and eat them, don't do it more than about once a week. And they actually warn pregnant women to not eat the fish from New Mexico streams at all. So I don't think people realize how much pollution there is out there. With that, Senator Merkley, I would yield back to you for any additional comments you have. And I see our good friend Senator Cardin here is on the floor and also has been a real leader on this, and I know he wants to speak also.
Well, I'll say that just one key aspect is that the House Republican budget would cut $2 billion from EPA's Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Infrastructure Loan Program. Now, as I'm going around my state, holding a town hall in every single county, I hold a meeting with the city and county leaders in advance of the public meeting. And at virtually every one of these gatherings, I hear stories from mayors and chairs of county councils who talk about the challenge they have with their aging infrastructure, both on their water supply and on their wastewater disposal. And that aging infrastructure needs to be upgraded as plants wear out and as we discover more challenges that we need to address. And so cutting the loan program that supports our communities, our rural communities, our suburban communities, our urban communities, all of our communities, in providing clean water to their residents and of helping dispose of and treat wastewater would be an enormous mistake. That partnership is absolutely crucial to communities who cannot otherwise afford this infrastructure. So that would mean more sewage and other pollution going into our waterways and less treatment of water we take out to drink.
Madam President, just in conclusion here from my perspective, I think the most important thing at this point in our history in America is that we take actions here on the Senate floor that are going to create jobs, that are going to try to move us forward in terms of our economic development. And this House Republican budget is devastating in terms of creating jobs. Leader Reid, I think, said 700,000 Americans are fired as a result of this as a result of this job-killing bill, this House Republican budget. It is a devastating thing to a fragile economic recovery that we have going on right now. So I'm very happy to hear very happy to hear that Senator Reid says we're going to bring the House Republican budget here to the Senate floor. We're going to have an up or down vote on that budget, and it will be out there. We're going to have lively debate until we have that vote, and it'll be out there for the American people to see the devastating consequences it could have if we adopted it.